Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Begin with roll call, please, Tracy.
Arbogast.
Here.
Mr. Garnos is absent. Gisselbeck.
Here.
Heller.
Here.
Johnson. Meisenheimer.
Here.
Solberg. Walder.
Here.
Mr. Wilson is absent. Mrs. York.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll begin with a motion to approve the minutes of the City Council meeting held February the 6th, 2006. Can I have a motion for that,
moved.
please? So moved by Mr. Heller. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Solberg. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We're going to vary from item number 2 and give the Odine Bierman a chance to update us on the Veterans Memorial Project.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, council members. Thank you for taking me early. I need to report to the Marine Corps League down the street a ways too, so. Just wanted to give you an update. We have some good news and we have some bad news. The bad news is that we originally wanted a high-profile POW to be our featured speaker at this memorial. So we invited Senator John McCain from Arizona. And our first dedication proposal date was June 14th, and of course Congress is in session, so he vetoed that right away. So then I quickly learned that the congressmen are in recess in the month of August. So I amended my letter, sent it off to Senator McCain saying, we'll give you 3 dates, the 17th or the 12th, 19th, and 26th of August. You choose, we'll work around it. Also talked with Senator Thune and Senator Johnson. They reinforced our invitation to no avail. He refused all 3 of them. So that's the bad news. Now the good news is our second choice was a high-profile POW also. And this person is a Congressional Medal of Honor winner, recipient, by the name of Colonel Leo Thorsness. He spent 6 years as a POW in Vietnam. I gave Leo the same dates I gave Senator McCain. Leo chose August 26th. Therefore, we said, this is our dedication date, August 26th. So we're working around that. I've also contacted Major General Patrick Brady and Michael Fitzmaurice, who are also both Congressional Medal of Honor recipients. Michael Fitzmaurice lives near Sioux Falls and said he was going to attend. General Brady lives, I believe, in Washington State and doubtful whether he'll be able to make it or not. So we're set for the dedication date, August 26th, 3 p.m. at the Stokes Thomas City Park. I've also contacted Chamber and put this on their calendar, so they have it on their calendar. Now our biggest problem is, what are we going to do with all the people? If we have 1,500 or 2,000 people, how are we going to handle that? We're going to need some coaching there for crowd control and parking availability. You know, the parking down there at the city park is not very large. There's parking over in the camping area, but we're thinking maybe we might be able to shuttle from some position out to the park and back again. Haven't heard anything from Governor Michael Rounds, so I'm waiting for that for him to respond. Haven't heard also from General Michael Gorman, who is the Adjutant General of the South Dakota National Guards. So I'm waiting for a response from him. Now at the present time, we're almost 800 names for our wall. Now the front of the wall will take care of a little over 1,000. And our goal is to at least cover the front of the wall. Our deadline date for taking names is June 1st. That's when, shortly after that, they're going to start engraving. And of course, if your name starts with A, you're out of luck. If it starts with a W or a Z, we might still be able to get you in alphabetically. But you can still get on. we're taking applications forever. I mean, we can always put your name on someplace or another. Our biggest boost was the Watertown Winter Farm Show. We had a booth out there, and that was a tremendous boost. We had people stopping in and talking, and we were handing out applications faster than we could make them practically. So that was a real big boost. If you know of anyone who is a veteran that hasn't got their name on the wall yet, please urge them along. They need a little urging because they've been calling up. They say, what's your deadline? Well, I don't want to tell you because then you're going to wait and you're going to procrastinate and you will forget. But I do tell them anyway, June 1st is their deadline. And that probably brings us up to date. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. I thank you again for having me early as you can because I appreciate it. Thank you much.
Thank you very much. Good job. Okay, we'll continue on with agenda item number 2, which is the application for transfer of a package off-sale liquor license from Lynn Ingalls to Scott and Kathy McEnroy, and we'll begin with a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to that license transfer? If not, then we'll close the public hearing and go to council action. And I would, Tracy, I believe everything's in order, isn't it, for the transfers, so.
And Mayor, if I could, if the record could reflect it, I did see both Scott and his wife in the audience. They are here tonight.
Did they wish to say anything? No? Okay, very good. If not, then could we have either a motion for or against to approve the transfer of the liquor license?
So moved.
So moved to approve the transfer, Mrs. Walder? Second? Seconded by Mr. Solberg. Is there any discussion on the issue? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 3 is an application for transfer of a retail on-off-sale malt beverage license from Doc's Bar to Jules Incorporated. And we'll begin with a public hearing. And is there anyone here to speak to that? Mr. Hopper?
Mayor Fox, members of the council, thank you. My name is Monty Hopper. I represent the applicant in this case, that is Jules Inc. Jules Inc. is a corporation owned solely by Julie Lacqua. Julie is here also this evening, and we can answer any questions that the council or anyone else may have regarding this application, but otherwise we're just here to answer questions.
Okay, is there anyone else to speak to the public hearing on this issue? If not, then we'll close the public hearing and go to council action. Could we have a motion then for the transfer?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Heller. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Meisenheimer. Is there any further discussion?
Everything's in order?
Yes, in fact, this property has gone through the Board of Adjustment, and a special exception has been granted that would pave the way for this transfer to occur.
If not, then is all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4, Herb, is the Southwest Watertown Storm Sewer Project and the non-point source funding for the Upper Big Sioux Watershed EPA 319 program. And I believe, Herb, you were going to speak to us on that?
Mayor, can you open the public hearing, please?
They open with a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue?
With that, Mayor, I'll go ahead. On January 3rd, I visited with the City Council about the Southwest Watertown Storm Sewer Project. Part of that project actually involves using some incentive financing, which is called non-point source fund incentive funds, and Alderman Johnson can help me in the discussion if we need further education once I get through here. I don't intend to go back and discuss the Southwest Watertown project tonight unless you have questions. But the reason I am here to talk about the non-point source funds is because as part of the SRF loan and the public notification process, because we didn't discuss it during the last meeting and because it wasn't public noticed, alluding to the fact that we'd be using funds to assist the EPA 319 project, the DENR representatives that deal with these loans thought it was important that we go back and do that. That's why we're here tonight. Again, I don't intend to address the Southwest Watertown Storm Sewer Project unless you have questions, but I will remind you that the purpose of the project was to facilitate stormwater drainage in southwest Watertown and take care of some closed basins that we have out there in order to facilitate further development. Austin Engineering investigated 3 alternatives and recommended that we run a storm sewer from just north of the event center east along 7th Street South under Highway 20 and into the McLaughlin Ponds, and then ultimately to empty into the Big Sioux River. The purpose of the non-point source funds generated with this loan will be to supplement the city's EPA 319 project along a stretch of the Big Sioux River north of Watertown. Areas that we're looking to fund will be nutrient management, filter strips, grass waterways, manure application management, shoreline and streambank restoration. We anticipate approximately $113,985 will be available for non-point source funding use. And what's important about that is by the ability to leverage these funds, we're able to in fact free up city funds that had been earmarked as the city's match towards that 319 project to use in other projects potentially. So again, I'll remind everybody that the proposed financing that we're talking about will have no effect on user rates, as right now the city doesn't levy a stormwater user fee. The city plans to pay back the loan out of general funds with sales tax revenues, and at some point in time in the future, the city will expect to recur some of the costs incurred as future development occurs in southwest Watertown and additional developments go on to the storm sewer system. You know, like I told you before, it's expected the cost will be recouped based on the percentage of runoff from a particular site in relation to the entire drainage basin based on a fully developed condition. These are the items that I needed to discuss with you tonight. And unless there's any further questions, I would ask for a motion from the City Council authorizing the Mayor and Finance Officer to sign Resolution 6-12, which is the SRS for the SRF loan. And what that entails is the city's again applying to the South Dakota Environment and Natural Resources for up to $1.3 million, $1,303,130 at 2.25% for 20 years, and that the city intends to use $1,189,145,000 of those to fund the storm sewer project, and then use the remaining funds to supplement the EPA's 319 program. The resolution also states the city's required to designate a certifying officer, and that the mayor is that certifying officer for the purpose of signing the loan application and other documents pertinent to the loan. With that, if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Okay, is there anyone else to speak on the public hearing to Herb? Is there any questions? If not, then we'll close the public hearing and go to council action. Could we have a motion then to approve the use of those funds?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Giselbeck. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Meisenheimer. Any further discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Herb. Item number 5 is the presentation of the feasibility report on the proposed sporting facility by Convention Sports and Leisure. And Karen Witt will introduce that.
I certainly will. Thank you, Mayor Fox, City Council. Thank you for giving us a few minutes here of your time. As you will recall, Vision 2015 was something that we presented to the council quite some time ago in the last year. And one of the areas that were identified by the community was sporting facilities in Watertown. There seem to have been groups that think that there's some need for sporting facilities. So we got the okay from the city, and the Watertown Community Foundation put some money, as well as the Chamber of Commerce, put some money together to hire a firm that we had used before with the event center called Convention Sports and Leisure International out of Minneapolis. And I will introduce them in a minute. And they had, they put together the first steps of a study to develop our needs. So they're here tonight to present that to City Council, and so I'd like to introduce John Kotz and Chris Nelson from Convention Sports and Leisure out of Minneapolis. And I just wanted to, they were here, and I think we were recollecting it was probably about 9 years ago now when we did this study for the Event Center. It seems like only yesterday, but it was really fun to have them there today to see how busy the Event Center was, and so I think that's a real enjoyment for John. And so I'll introduce now John Kotz, and Chris Nelson will do their presentation.
Thanks
Thank you.
again, and thank you, Mayor and Council members. It was fun. It was a pleasure to be at the Event Center and actually present in a building that we had a little bit to do with in terms of the feasibility aspect. So it sounds like it's doing great, and it is a beautiful building. Like, the community did a fantastic job of realizing that vision. So I have a presentation. We've spent the last couple of months doing some research, taking a look at issues that relate to market demand for sports and event facilities, comparable facility analysis, trying to understand what's happening with respect to new facility development within the market, existing facility improvements and expansions, looking at some of the market demand issues from the tournaments or from the community organizations. And then lastly, we'll spend a few minutes talking about some of the kind of the recommendations or the guiding principles, if you want to call them that, for moving forward to the next step of development. From a local perspective, we'll take flat floor venues first. 20 courts. These are basketball courts, volleyball courts, whatnot, of varying sizes. There's only about 6 of them that are full-size courts, which does cause some issues relative to adolescent and older sporting events, tournaments, and the like. And a lot of those are controlled by the school system, which is, I think, inherently wrong with that, but you run into a scheduling problem. So we're in a situation where just for community use, putting aside economic impact generating tournaments, there's a tremendous pressure on the existing court surfaces for activity. You end up with situations where they're running from 10 a.m. to 10 at night, or kids are practicing at 6 in the morning, and on and on and on. So it wasn't very difficult to us for us through our interview process to identify that as an issue. Lack of indoor soccer facilities. There really aren't facilities suitable to indoor soccer, and similar with tennis. So at the end of the day, we can pretty easily identify the basketball, the volleyball, the sports, local sports organizations, club rec sports, all the way up to soccer and tennis as a need within the community. And then that doesn't even include the issues of larger tournaments, the Willie Mack type tournaments and the state high school tournaments that are also looking for additional space. Related to that would be swimming pools and ice sheets. Right now there is one indoor ice sheet, several outdoor ice sheets. The indoor sheet has been very successful, highly occupied, and it's certainly reasonable to say the market could support an additional indoor sheet. And with respect to the aquatic venues, the new Family Aquatic Center obviously is going to open and will have a positive impact on the market, and you already have one Olympic-sized pool, so maybe not as dramatic a need, but certainly facilities that the community needs to pay attention to and monitor in terms of development going forward. I would say, again, the ice sheet's highly used and probably could be expanded. An aquatic center, I think we'll wait and see on that, simply because you've got a new venue opening that should be very successful. You? Or just me? Oh. I went all the way to the end of the presentation. So if you all saw that, then I think we can conclude. Lastly, from a broad market perspective, the fixed seating venues. Right now, the main fixed seating venue is certainly the Civic Arena. Capacity of 5,200 or so, down to 2,100 if you have to expose the existing 16,500 square feet of floor space. In other words, you retract this, you roll the seats back up and you reduce the capacity. One of the older venues in the state, I think it's the third or fourth oldest, third or fourth smallest amongst the competitive set that we've looked at. And again, the floor space is an issue. Certainly for wrestling and volleyball, they're taking a close look at whether or not the existing Civic Arena can accommodate their needs going forward. Wrestling is in town here coming up, $500,000 in economic impact from that tournament that very possibly could be lost to this market if they experience pressure points within the civic arena, recognizing that there are other venues across the state that are being developed that can accommodate them more effectively. So that's a challenge. And then availability. As with some of the flat floor venues, the civic arena is a highly used facility. It isn't easy to get dates in that space. So even if the capacity were there, in terms of seats and floor space, there are a lot of events that just can't get in because of dates, and that's again not an issue with anybody, not an issue with the school system. It's a positive thing, very positive thing to have busy, active facilities, but it is an indication to us that there are enough pressure points there that say an additional venue of some type certainly could be supported from local use, to be sure, but also from the perspective of tournaments and other events. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Nelson for a moment to talk about some of the facility development that's taking place throughout other regions of the state.
With relation to the market, we started by looking at the top, both existing and planned facilities size-wise within the state of South Dakota. In looking at this chart, a few things stand out. I guess first, the Civic Arena is the fourth oldest facility, constructed in 1963. It's also the fourth smallest facility with a maximum seating capacity of 5,200. You might also notice that two communities are looking at possibly building new arenas. Those are Sioux Falls, looking at potentially 12,000 seats, and also Mitchell, looking at potentially 8,000 seats. So those two facilities, if constructed, could add 20,000 seats to the market. You might also notice under the owner category, 4 of these facilities are university controlled, and a total of 7 have some sort of an educational relation, either being a university or a school district. We next took a look at the average seating capacity of host venues for the South Dakota High School State Championships. We took a look by sport. You can see the red line outlines the 5,200 seat maximum capacity of the Watertown Civic Arena. And might also notice that many of the events on the left side, 7 of the 13 total sporting events, are hosted currently at the Civic Arena. And although it may appear that the venue is suitable for these events, some of the challenges have to do with the fact that when the floor space is in use for, say, volleyball, which might require space for 2 to 3 courts, that really just leaves the fixed seating component available. So then the seating capacity is reduced to 2,100. So it might not be quite as accommodating. Next, we've taken a look at the ratio of market population to arena seats. We've done this for the same 13 facilities in the earlier slide. Here you can see that Watertown currently has a ratio of approximately 6 seats, or 6 people per arena seat, identified in yellow. Interestingly, Mitchell currently with a ratio of 7 people per seat. If that new facility were constructed at 8,000 seats, that ratio could go down as low as 2.8. Watertown could experience also a similar reduction in its ratio if a new facility were constructed. And to summarize some of the main points, Watertown currently has a high ratio of population to seats, as just discussed. Second, the age and capacity issues with Civic Arena, which John mentioned a little bit, relates to the fact that the floor space available at the venue, 16,500 square feet, is not ideal for certain events, namely wrestling, as is taking place this weekend at the venue, also volleyball, where the capacity is reduced to 2,100 seats. Importantly, 2 new competitive venues are being considered. As I mentioned, Sioux Falls and Mitchell are looking to add venues, potentially adding 20,000 seats to the market. Also, 4 of these venues are driven largely by university use, and also, as I mentioned, 7 total have some sort of educational relation. And lastly, many of these tournaments require other community elements, namely hotels, also things like restaurants and entertainment. With respect to hotels, kind of an overriding theme we've heard from a lot of the tournament organizers. Watertown currently has 650 total hotel rooms, whereas some of the competition, Aberdeen, for example, has 800. Mitchell has approximately 1,100, and then Sioux Falls and Rapid City each have 4,000. So.
Okay, I thought it was interesting in taking a look at a lot of that data that the concept of Mitchell going to a 10,000 seat arena is literally 2.8 people in their population per seat in that arena. I mean, it is it's a lot of space, and it's something we're very respectful of when we take a look at market demand issues. Is it a situation where it warrants going to a 10,000 seat arena to accommodate boys basketball that probably looks for more hotel rooms than we have to offer anyway? Or is that an overkill situation where we're building the church for Easter Sunday, or is that appropriate? And we're very cognizant of the fact that we're reluctant to recommend building something so large and so expensive, and then find out that all the other events that need 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 seats end up feeling very uncomfortable in a large cavernous venue. So just food for thought as we go forward. Some issues relative to the athletic recreation facility demand. Obviously, at the end of the day, we're looking for practice space for local athletic organizations, sports leagues, in-season games for local private school athletics, youth games and tournaments, support space for regional athletic tournaments, multi-purpose space. The concept, the phrase, the essence of this building needs to be multi-purpose. It can't be a single-focus building. And then at the end of the day, we're alleviating constraints on a lot of the existing space. We note that the rec center, civic arena, a lot of the indoor spaces run at a tremendously high occupancy, and it's almost to the point where it's not really healthy for the building. Hard to maintain it, the wear and tear mounts up, you can't get in there and do what you need to do. So the concept of adding flat floor space, if nothing else, takes a little bit of the pressure off some of these buildings and lets them operate at a bit more sane of a pace. So we take a look at what type of building might make some sense from a flat floor perspective to begin to accommodate what it is we're talking about. Well, we'd love to see a floor area with the capabilities to host 3 to 4 courts, basketball, volleyball type courts in a row, basically, 240 foot by 130 foot dimension. Flexible surface materials that allow certainly for volleyball and basketball, but we're exploring ways to allow it to accommodate indoor tennis and indoor soccer as well, because we've identified those as secondary needs for the market, and multi-purpose is the phrase to keep in the back of your mind. We began with a concept that had very limited seating capacity, 400 or 500 seats for mom and dad to come watch their kids at the local tournament or local rec game. But we've begun to expand on that. We've begun to expand on that concept, so we want to keep the options very broad with respect to seating, and I'll get into that in a second. And at the end of the day, we're looking at basketball, volleyball, wrestling, gymnastics, potential for the tennis and soccer and other recreational activities. So I'm just getting us started here towards the themes that are going to allow us to start phrasing a potential building alternative. From a fixed seating perspective, the increased arena capacity statewide is something we're paying again close attention to. A lot more competition. The universe of tournament events isn't anytime soon going to increase significantly, yet competition keeps building arenas. Our slice of the pie is going to get smaller and smaller over time. Not to say we'd be out of that business, but we want to make sure we understand that it's a fairly finite universe and a lot of competition going on. Conversely, if we don't do something, there isn't the luxury of saying we've got wrestling, we've got some volleyball games, we're going to keep them forever. You can't stand still. You're either going to go backwards by doing nothing, or you're going to make an investment and try to retain some of these events. And I'm not saying that that's the right course of action, but I think it's important for decision makers to know that something would need to be done to maintain the current status and improve upon it. And again, we're retaining the economic impact generating events and potential for other entertainment activities as well. We don't see this as a major concert destination, but certainly there'll be entertainment events that could be used, could be housed in some sort of facility. And the options to accommodate that include civic arena enhancements and the new facility development. And a lot of loaded issues with respect to those two concepts. Let me talk a little bit about them. We've got here 7 classes of tournaments ranging from the boys basketball to the gymnastics, and the capacities that they need in order to be successful according to the event planners. Right now, you can see Watertown on the number 1 red bar there represents the capacity when the seats are all folded back, 2,100 seats. And you can do gymnastics, which we've chosen not to do at this stage, volleyball, kind of. Girls basketball is a stretch. Certainly 3 classes of volleyball we've been out of for a year. We're not going to maintain it. Wrestling, we can get to 4,000 seats in the existing arena. There's a combination. Some of the seats are full or retracted, and some of the seats remain, so you can get 4,000 seats, creating pressure on the floor area. And that's what they're going to be watching over the next couple of weeks. The mat sizes have been reduced to some degree. They're dangerously close is not the right phrase, but they're closer than their comfort level in terms of producing the event. So they're watching how the Civic Arena performs, and if it doesn't work appropriately, they would pull out of the market. And again, that alone is a $500,000 economic impact. So we take this into consideration. We say, what kind of size might make some sense in terms of a capacity? Well, again, Mitchell's going to 10,000. Sioux Falls is going to 12,000. Sioux Falls has got had a plan on the table that was $30 to $50 million. Mitchell's plan is $20 million. Large arenas, large costs to go after boys basketball, in essence, and other community events, to be sure. But our sense here is that perhaps Watertown's best bet is to focus on the wrestling on down, to create a very functional environment that allows us to capture 4,200 capacity for wrestling, maybe even a little more, and allows us to capture 3 classes of volleyball if that's the direction they go. Certainly all the girls basketball events. In an environment that allows for, again, 3 to 4 courts. So you've now begun to create this environment where we've got the floor space, 30,000 square feet of floor space potentially, recognizing that the current Civic Arena has 16,005, so almost double the floor space, in an environment where we create a great seating capacity at 5,000 or so, 4,000 or 5,000 seats, that allows us to go after the large majority of tournaments. Wouldn't let us get boys basketball, but at the end of the day, again, they're looking for other things besides capacity. They need hotel rooms, which we're probably not going to have anytime soon. So we're starting to focus on a capacity that starts to make sense in a physical framework that isn't 43 years old and doesn't have the date limitations that the current Civic Arena has. So where are we? What do we do? Again, the Civic Arena enhancement option was thrown out there. I want to discuss that for just a few moments. We were seriously looking at the concept of removing some of the existing weight facilities on the stage, reclaiming that space from the rec center, adding 500 to 800 seats in that space, expanding the floor area and the capacity of the Civic Arena. Rec center now gets displaced from its some of its space, needs to reclaim some space. Perhaps the next move in order would be taking the Boys and Girls Club and dedicating that space to the rec center, and then creating some new Boys and Girls Club space somewhere else within the community, perhaps as part of a 3 or 4 court flat floor venue with no seats. Our concerns, and these concerns are shared by the high school folks, you're going to end up with 500, 800 seats that really are not functional. The sight lines are not good. The quality of the seats are not good. The horror scenario for us would be spending multiple millions of dollars to create that environment and then go to the community, go to the tournaments, go to the state, the entire state, and say, here's what we've done, and then have it land like a big thud, and everybody says, you know, what did you waste your money? Nobody wants to sit up there. The high school league doesn't consider it a functional space. And so we've really started to shy away from that concept and move again towards this concept of a new facility that combines a large component of flat floor space with as many seats as we need. Now, what is that? What is that space? As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be incredibly expensive space. We've talked to some architects that have done a lot of work in Sioux Falls and markets around the country for projects of this type. We may be in the $5 or $6 million range to create that 30,000 square foot of floor space, seats in the 4,000 range, maybe a little more, in a well done facility. It'd be more than just a Butler building, to be sure. Wouldn't be wouldn't be Madison Square Garden, to be sure, but it would be a nice facility. I think something in the character of the existing event center in terms of some of the finishes. So really a nicely done building. would have the lobby areas, locker facilities, offices, pre-function, concessions areas. And the way you do it is, if you can imagine a kind of a rectangle shape, you'd be able to create 8 or 9, 10 rows of seats on one side or the other, or both in combination. Could be bleacher seats, could be individual seats, it could be a combination of the two that could provide you as many seats as you realistically need. And if we do it right, and this was a big discussion earlier today, it wouldn't be tough, and I'm not an architect, but I'm speculating here, it wouldn't be tough to create a structural envelope that allows you to expand those seats over time. The next generation comes in and says, boy, what were they thinking? You know, we need 7,000 seats, and perhaps we can do that. There is a bit of an architectural issue that I do know about, and that's if you get to a certain level of seating, the exiting requirements become very, very difficult from a code perspective. You need a lot of vomitories that access the facility. You get closer and closer to the day where you've got to create a second deck to get any kind of sight lines, and that's when you jump to a Mitchell type scenario where you're $20 million, or even worse, Sioux Falls, where you're over $30 million in terms of project costs. So we probably never have the ability to go to 10,000 seats in that framework, but certainly 5,000 or 6,000 seats for a concert venue or a tournament would be very reasonable. Either we do it all today, or we could stage it over time per the discussions with the various users. To implement something like that effectively, we would suggest very strongly that we convene a group and a series of meetings with representatives from everybody that has to do with youth tournaments, high school tournaments, community activities, seniors, just a whole cross-section of potential users of this facility, and get up on the board all the potential uses for the space. What do you want to see in this space when all is said and done? Not to say we can do it all, but we'd have a good starting point to say, what does this thing need to be like? Perhaps we consider the Boys and Girls Club going over to the rec center, dedicating that space, and we can create a small amount of Boys and Girls Club space within this venue, right, and add some activity and some life to the building. And I think that would be a positive thing that would satisfy the rec center needs within the same confines. So there is some planning work and some concepts that need to be undertaken in terms of this next step, but I think it'd be an exciting process of kind of creating that wish list and having an architect work with us to say which can be done now, which need to be shelved for later, and which simply won't work in the confines of this facility. So that's where we're at. I'll certainly entertain questions. I thank you very much for your attention.
Does the council have any questions for our presenters?
What do we be looking at for the next phase? I mean, we have obviously engaging you guys further in that. Is that chamber, has that organization looked at potentials for budgeting purposes if we're going to pursue this? I mean, what should we be looking at?
I can speak to that. Yeah. You know, we have moved very quickly in a fairly short period of time and a fairly limited budget to get to this point. And our initial concept was this was going to be a look-see, an initial research project to help focus a little bit, but it wasn't intended to be the full feasibility study that involved was involved with in the event center. In reality, I think it's incumbent on the council and the community to agree or disagree. We've kind of narrowed this thing down pretty effectively. I think we've taken, at least from my perspective, we've taken off the table a $20 million arena to do boys state basketball tournaments. We've identified flat floor needs and an element of seating that is functional and appropriate for the market. So I think we've probably gotten an entire feasibility study done in a low budget and in a limited time frame. The next step then is to say, if the community is in general agreement with that concept, the next step is to start to flesh that out. And I can't do it as part of CSL. An architect can't do it sitting in their little offices. The exercise involves, again, getting these groups together in a 1 or 2 day charrette setting to say what needs to be involved in this building to make the community happy. The architect needs to be there with us so they can take notes and they can tell us when we're getting a little off track, and they can go back to their shop with the discussion points and come back to us with a plan that accommodates as many needs as possible and a potential price for that. Our involvement is pretty limited. I mean, not many thousands of dollars at all, $4,000 or $5,000 for the time to do that. The architect may not be too dissimilar from that, only because a lot of the architect friends I have would come in here and do this kind of as a marketing exercise to some degree. So I don't think it would be an extensively expensive or time-consuming process for this next phase. Fortunately, I think we were pretty effective in getting us to this stage already. Long-winded answer, but
Great.
I wanted to take credit for going so fast so quickly.
We like that.
I have a question on the life of the arena without any major refurbishing and that. Do you have an idea there, or does anybody have an idea?
You know, I probably wouldn't be the best person to ask. I do know it's a heavily used facility. My guess is, and Chris, I don't know if you had this conversation, that there is a capital improvements list longer than my arm that they'd like to see implemented to keep the building going.
There really hasn't been much done, significantly anyway. I mean, since '63.
Regular maintenance. So there probably are things that could be done to spiff it up. But I don't think it's falling in on itself in any sense. And it is a highly used, highly active facility. It's an interesting question. What happens with the Civic Arena if this new facility were built? Some of the larger seated events would likely leave that facility. But I don't think that's a bad thing. It's probably almost overused right now in terms of being able to maintain it.
I think it's interesting that you people think that being old was built in 1963.
Well, I'm older than the building. I don't feel old. So.
Well, the other thing is I wanted to say this thing has kind of evolved and it's kind of grown like Topsy. It started off as, to my understanding, a couple of fathers who were upset because they couldn't get their kids' practice time on basketball. And it's evolved from that 1 or 2 practice courts to a 10,000 seat facility. And you know, one of the things I think you've forgotten about is that second sheet of ice. That maybe if you were going to do something, you should incorporate the two together or something like that in that neighborhood.
Yeah, we've thought of that. Yeah. Good points, and indeed we did start with this, 3 or 4 courts, and that's about it. Maybe some concession stands and a little lobby space, and it gravitated towards the seated venue when we realized that the Civic Arena probably wasn't going to be able to accommodate the tournaments long term. So if the decision is on the behalf of the community that we want to stay in that tournament business, you kind of need the seats. And talking to the architects, relative to the costs they're talking about in Mitchell or Sioux Falls, we could probably get it pretty cost effectively to allow us to do the community events and the tournaments in one venue. With respect to the ice sheets, it's tough. You can do it, but it's tough to put ice in a facility like that from a utilization perspective. You don't put the ice in and take the ice out on a weekend kind of thing. Yet the current Moss Ice Arena is highly active. Not that old, and they're full. I mean, it didn't take long, and that's not a surprise. When we talked about the user group sessions that we would suggest you form, proponents of a new ice sheet will more than likely, I'm sure definitely be there. And I think that concept needs to be on the list of things that we should consider trying to provide for. Maybe not within this new facility, but in the context of an overall investment package for the community, it may not be out of line to suggest several $100,000 be dedicated to the development of that second sheet in a different location. It doesn't have to be part of the physical package, but I do think there is, if there's another need not addressed by this project, it is the ice sheet.
I agree, and I was thinking more like building side by side with a
Yes.
center area with concessions and all that.
That is certainly an option as well, and it would depend on the site and the available real estate, but that would offer some great synergies between the two complexes.
Has anything been looked at as far as the National Guard, new National Guard Armory or the old National Guard Armory, incorporating anything like that into?
I don't know that it is suitable for the kind of events we're talking about in terms of the larger seating capacity. So to answer your question,
But it would be suitable for practice. I mean,
would and will. Yep, it could offer some additional floor area, practice area. Yep, that's certainly an alternative. It wouldn't address all of our needs, but by any stretch. But I tell you what, in this community, every surface area, if you're a parent with a child or children that are in sports, or if you're in sports yourself, every square footage of surface area is gold. So the more you can get, the better.
So the next step will be the completion of a booklet or something you'll be
Yes.
presenting to us, and then
Yep.
with the recommendation as to different groups of people we'd want to get involved in, to have a kind of a meeting with them to decide on what direction we want to go with this. Is that
Yes,
correct?
we'll issue a written report that has the summary of the analysis, incorporating any comments that we've heard today.
Okay.
And then if the community is of the opinion that it's worth pursuing to the next level, an investment in bringing these groups together to try to hone in on what the amenities and features of the project would be the next step.
And in the meantime, I hope everybody's out looking for a sugar daddy. You can come up with $10 million. Monty?
That, okay.
You're the only guy in a suit here.
That might be how long for this the write-up of the report?
Well, I think the
a
report
month or?
shouldn't be more than a couple weeks to get
Okay,
the
all right.
report done. Yeah.
All right, very good. Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, well, thank you very much for the presentation.
My
We'll-
pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our next item. Agenda item number 6 is consideration of bids received for the purchase of 95-gallon waste containers for the solid waste department. These bids were opened in January 27th. And Mike Berger?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Fox, members of the council. 4 bids were received, however, none met the specifications 100%. The vendors made from 1 to 9 exceptions to the specification, and these exceptions range from physical exceptions to the container itself to failing to supply required information. Given that none of the bids complied 100% with the spec, my recommendation is to reject and re-advertise. I would prefer not to award a bid with exceptions if possible. Since the bid opening, we have reviewed the specifications against some of these containers and additional information supplied by the vendors to clear up any conflicting information. And so again, my recommendation is to reject and re-advertise, and this comes with the approval of February 14th Public Works Committee.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Heller. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Meisenheimer. Is there any further discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 7 is the first reading of the ordinance number 6-04, rezoning lots 10 through 15, Gilmore Beach addition to R3 multifamily residential. And Rick?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Included in your packet is a petition brought to you by, KAM Development Group, LLC. The signator there is Rod Redland. The portion for those, and if you want me to bring it up on the arc view of the aerial images, I can certainly do that. We've included that information in your council packets. It's the area generally in that Sunnyside Inn location. The portions, there's probably about six lots there. The Sunnyside Inn location is zoned C3 currently, which is Highway Commercial Zoning District. The remainder of the properties are currently zoned R1, Single Family Residential District. The petitioner requests an R3 Multifamily Residential Zoning District be affixed to that. This has gone through the Plan Commission with the recommendation to go to R3. This is a first reading this evening. We have scheduled for your March 6th meeting a public hearing, the second reading, and your action on this item.
So there's no action required.
No action required this evening.
So-
That's right.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. We'll go on to item number 8 then. The plat of the West Lockwood Edition, Resolution 06-11. And Rick?
This matter is related to an action that you've taken just this evening. Item number 3, you'll see the transfer of a liquor license went to Lot 1, West Lockwood Edition. In conjunction with working with the applicants for the liquor transfer, they were going to do that by legal description it seemed it was time to clean up the language, so we asked for a replat, and they accommodated our request in that regard. They actually, in addition to that, went and increased the amount of property that they were going to have to purchase by an extra 5 feet width by approximately 400 feet wide to accommodate so we get a conforming lot. The structure, I will tell you, will be non-conforming, and we made that aware, or that issue, we brought that to the attention of the Plan Commission. The issue there being the building that exists on that location will enter into the side yard setback area by a few feet. The owner, David Hackinson from Vernal, Utah, brings this plat request to you. Again, it's in conjunction with a purchase that's a pending on the property and a transfer to that property of a liquor license. This issue was brought up at the Planning Commission February 8th. Comes to you with their recommendation for approval. Mr. Hopper is here representing the owner, who is also here, Ms. Lacqua. Well, one of the concerned parties, I don't believe the owner is here. So.
Okay.
I don't want to take any action, but I'm just trying to put in my mind's eye where I'd say Highway 212 and 14th Street West. Where is that?
I think it used to be the home of Happy Homes. Does that ring a bell?
The manufactured housing dealership.
Hedall's Auto Parts is to the east of that, just a
South
lot
side of
or
the
two.
road.
It's directly adjacent to Hedall's Auto Parts.
Okay. Can we have a motion then for the approval of Resolution 06-11?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Johnson. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Heller. Is there any further discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Rick. Next is on the agenda, item number 9, is the appointment of Tom Lindgren to fill the vacancy on the library board. And Lou Fierstein had submitted a resignation, and I received some names from Mike Mullen, our library director. And so I chosen Tom Lindgren, who's a local attorney, to fill the post. I called him. He said he'd be happy to serve. And so I asked for the council's approval of Tom. If anyone has any questions, everyone know who Tom is. He's the son of Dave and Patty Lindgren, local attorney, so forth. So
I make a motion, we approve the appointment.
okay, a motion by Mrs. York, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 10 is the authorization for the mayor to sign an agreement with Onyx Environmental LLC for the 2006 Household Hazardous Waste Event. Mike Berger.
Thank you, Mayor Fox, members of the council. Onyx has worked with the city in providing 4 previous household hazardous waste events. This event is scheduled to be held on Saturday, April 29th at the wastewater treatment facility from 8 a.m. until noon. The event will be held to collect and divert residential hazardous substances away from the landfill, protecting leachate water quality. Some of the items collected will be oil-based paint, aerosols, flammable solvents, lithium and NiCad batteries, mercury, and miscellaneous electronic items. The estimated cost, based on previous volumes and current price, is $6,748.10. The actual cost will vary depending upon participation levels. We do have $20,000 budgeted for the disposal of hazardous waste, which is for this event, and the removal of freon from our white goods. And so I request a motion for the mayor to sign this agreement with Onyx Environmental for the 2006 Household Hazardous Waste event.
We have excuse me.
I'm
Mike.
sorry. This comes with Public Works recommendation as well.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Is that a motion then to sign that agreement? So moved by Mr. Solberg. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mrs. Arbogast. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mike. Next is item number 11, which is the applications for business licenses. We'll take them both together. One is Grants Mechanical for a plumbing contractor, and number B is Precision Drive and Control Incorporated for electrical contracting. Could we have a motion to approve those business licenses?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Johnson. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Heller. Is there any further discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we'll go to the open, and we do have 2 items on the open. If you'll go to your sheets here. The first open will be a resolution to amend funding plan for the First Avenue Extension Project and that's resolution number 6-13. And Herb?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, the purpose of Resolution 6-13, which is attached to your open agenda, is to update the amount of funds that the city can request from the Department of Transportation as part of Urban Systems money for the First Avenue North Extension Project. Last year, the council approved a resolution that requested $1.5 million in Urban Systems dollars, with the city's share being $2.5 million for a total project of $4 million. Our point of contact at Pier DOT informed us that with the 2007 federal urban systems allocation, there will actually be approximately $1,968,000 available in urban systems dollars that we could apply towards the First Avenue project if we so desire, thus leaving just a little bit over $2 million for the city to fund. But if we want to do that, the council needs to adopt the resolution that you have in front of you for us to be able to do that. I had this discussion with both the Public Works Committee and the Finance Committee, and it was their recommendation of approval to proceed forward with that. So with that, I would request a motion authorizing the mayor and finance officer to sign Resolution 6-13.
Could we have a motion then, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Heller. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Walter. Any further discussion or questions? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. The next item, item number 2 on the open, is the information update on the Stormwater Phase 2 program. And Rick?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to take this opportunity to share with you, and I believe you have copies of a flyer that will be included in our municipal utilities bill, the upcoming bill. Just taking this venue as an opportunity to share with everyone that's watching and that would view the meeting that they take the opportunity when they open the mail and they're sorting through looking for what the utility bill was. When they come across this flyer that we've produced with the help of the Non-Point Source Toolbox and a local printing company, just some information as to, did you know that one of the big issues, anything that hits the storm sewer is not treated. It doesn't go to our wastewater treatment plant. It goes directly to a river, stream, or lake. What is the storm sewer system? It includes ditches, curbs and gutters, inlets, catch basins, channels, detention facilities, our river systems in town. And what is stormwater? Anything that hits the ground, either through a snowflake or raindrop, when it hits the ground, has that opportunity to pick up whatever's sitting on any of those surfaces we've already talked about, and can be delivered directly to a surface water in our vicinity without treatment. That's the big issue there. So I hope everyone will have a chance to sort through their bill, and will, at least, maybe take the time to reflect on, some of the points that we're trying to get across here.
Right after they get over the shock of the cold weather here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Are there any other issues to come before the open? If not, we'll move to item number 13, which is any old business. If not any old business, is there any new business? Are there any liaison member reports? We will not have an executive session this evening, and with that, I'd like to motion to adjourn. So moved by Mr. Giselbeck. Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Arbogast. All in favor, aye? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.